Welcome to Photoshop, and today, as per request, we're going to go over blending modes. And I'm sorry if you get confused, but some of these are kind of complicated and difficult to understand. Now, I'm going to be reading the definitions that I got off the Adobe website, and I have an overlay to help try to explain what is going on. I will tell you right now, don't try to remember all of these. I don't even know or remember exactly what all of them do all the time. So there's ones that you're going to use a lot, and there's ones that you're probably never going to use, and then one or two that you might use occasionally. But here we go. White, 50% gray, and black. And that has to do with this layer. So blending modes work when one layer is on top of the other layer and you're trying to blend the two layers together. Now, blending modes are freaking awesome, all right? They work great. But some of them are difficult to explain and understand what's going on. So we have some simple ones and some complex ones. So I wrote white, 50% gray, and black because it's going to be helpful to remember that this is black, this is 50% gray, this is white, and then we have red, green, and blue. So you can see how colors affect the image. Blending modes are under this little section right here. And the greatest thing, if you have the newest version of Photoshop, as you hover over it, you get an instant view of exactly what your image is going to look like. Before, you actually had to apply it. Now you can just kind of go down, hover, and you see exactly what these are going to do. So this is a great addition, probably one of my favorite additions that Adobe has done to anything in Photoshop in a long time. Normal is just your normal view, so whatever is on top is what you're going to see. Since we have this layer on top, it overrides this layer because layer order is important inside of Photoshop. The next blending mode is dissolve, and I've switched to just two images on this because I think it's going to be a little bit easier to understand. It's quite a bit different than the rest of the blending modes. So dissolve edits or paints each pixel to make the result color. However, the result color is a random replacement of the pixels with the base color or the blend color, depending on the opacity at any pixel location. That just doesn't make any sense. It's hard to understand. Basically, what you're doing is you're going to lower the opacity of one of the layers, or in this case, the top layer, to see the layer below it. And what you're doing is getting this sort of dissolve effect. So it looks like one image is dissolving into the other. So depending on the opacity, you're either going to have the bottom layer be more prominent or the top layer be more prominent in the image. So it really just kind of depends on what you want. And the way it does that is by this sort of dissolve effect. So we are going to go from dissolve to the darkening blend modes. Hovering over darken, and I'm going to read you the definition first, and then I'll try to explain it. Just so you know, remember, these are a little bit difficult to understand. Darken looks at the color information in each channel and selects the base or blend color, whichever is darker, as the result color. Pixels lighter than the blend color are replaced, and pixels darker than the blend color do not change. So I think if you forget the first part of what this is trying to say and just go on the second part, where it's saying pixels lighter than the blend color. So in this case, notice that we have white. So when we go over darken, everything in the layer below white is going to be darker, so you are going to see that. In 50% gray, a majority of the pixels in this image are darker than 50% gray, so you're going to see that. But however, where there's ones that are lighter, you're seeing gray. Almost nothing in the layer below is going to be darker than black, so it's overriding that. And then don't really worry about the red, green, and blue in this image. This is not really having any effect. The red, green, and blue has to do with some specific color modes, and when those come into effect, I will let you know about them. The next one we have is multiply. Multiply looks at the color information in each channel and multiplies the base color by the blend color. The result color is always a darker color. Multiplying any color with black produces black. Multiplying any color with white leaves the color unchanged. When you're painting with a color other than black or white, successive strokes with the painting tool produce progressively darker colors. The effect is similar to drawing an image with multiple marking pens. Now, I don't think the second part is going to be helpful as far as photography because we're not really doing sort of that sort of effect. With white, multiply is doing what? Let's go ahead and hit multiply. So I'm going to turn this on and off, on and off. It's not doing anything to our image. However, 50% gray is darkening everything by 50% in the layer below it. And black is not going to affect the image below it in multiply. If you multiply black by black, it's just going to be black. So in this case, the darken blend modes, and you'll see this most effect is either going to be in the white or the gray in these images. So if you want to darken your image, you can use multiply, and anything that's kind of gray is going to darken your image. Anything that's a highlight or white is not going to affect it, and black is going to override it. Now, this is important in photography. A lot of these blend modes are like really easy to use, but a lot of people think you can just take two random images and mix them together and they're going to come out and work perfect. It really helps if you have an idea of what the blend modes do and then shoot in a manner that makes them most effective. Our next mode here is color burn. So what they say about color burn: looks at the color information in each channel and darkens the base color to reflect the blend color by increasing contrast between the two. Blending with white produces no change. So we look at the two colors here in color burn. If there is a difference in color, meaning if it's something other than white, it increases the color by increasing the contrast. So you can see here in 50% gray, it's increasing that contrast between all the colors in the original image. Black, it's just doing it so much that in most cases it's all black. Color burn, it's not something you use very often, but that's what it does. Linear burn looks at the color information in each channel and darkens the base color to reflect the blend color by result color. Pixels darker than the blend color are replaced, and pixels lighter than the blend color do not change. So in linear burn, you can see here basically what it's doing is darkening the color below when any color above it is darker than the base color. Nothing is going to be darker than white. However, you notice this red is darker in some of these areas. So it's darkening and replacing it with that top color. So I think that's kind of one of the main differences. Another one here in linear burn, it is replacing everything with 50%, it's 50% gray, it's just replacing it and making that color darker. It's not increasing the contrast like it did before, it's just making it darker. And same thing with black. Alright, so we are in darker color. Compares the total of all channel values for the blend and the base color and displays the lower value color. Darker color does not produce a third color, which can result from the darkened blend because it chooses the lowest values between the base and the blend colors to create a result color. Basically, there's the bottom values and the top values. If the top value is lighter, it's not applying it at all. If the top value is darker, then it's using that color instead of the bottom color. And that's why we're getting this weird sort of effect. In the blacks, obviously, it's replacing everything with black because black is going to be darker than the top color. Our next blending mode is lighten, we can see here. So lighten looks at the color information in each channel and selects the base or blend color whichever is lighter, as the result color. Pixels darker than the blend color are replaced, and pixels lighter than the blend color do not change. So we can see in this case, white, you are not seeing through. They are all replaced. You're using this white color here. If you have black and lighten, you are going to basically show right through, and nothing is going to be changed in the bottom layer. So it's going to make the top layer invisible. And the gray pixels, which is kind of weird, we are kind of getting this lower contrast. So it's applying it over top of the image. So you're getting sort of a semi-transparency. You're getting some of the gray and the bottom, depending on whether the pixel on top is brighter or darker. So you can see in this mode, gray can really screw up your image. Screen looks at each channel's color information and multiplies the inverse of the blend and base colors. The result color is always a lighter color. The screening with black leaves the color unchanged. Screening with white produces white. The effect is similar to projecting multiple photographic slides on top of each other. So we can see in the screen mode, if you have white on top, nothing is going to show through. If we have 50% gray, it is lightening that area by 50%. And if we have black, it is leaving that area alone and nothing is being affected. Color dodge looks at the color information in each channel and brightens the base color to reflect the blend color by decreasing the contrast between the two. Blending with black produces no change. So if you blend with black, there's no change. If we blend and the color in this case is lighter, it's going to blend the colors and increase the contrast of the image by brightening it. So it's making it brighter by increasing the contrast in these two situations. In this one, there's not a lot that's being affected. You can see here, if you're using color dodge, the best method or best color to use in this case would be 50% gray. Looks at color information in each channel and brightens the base color to reflect the blend color by increasing the brightness. Blending with black produces no change. In the other case, where the one before it, color dodged, increased the brightness by increasing the contrast, this does it by brightness instead of contrast is really the only difference. So in black, there's no change. White, there's almost no change. And 50% gray, it's brightening by increasing the brightness versus color dodge, which did it by contrast. So in this case, if you wanted to use color dodge, using something with 50% gray or gray colors is really going to be the way to go to make it effective. Lighter color compares the total of all channel values for the blend and base color and displays the higher value color. Lighter color does not produce a third color, which can result from a lightened blend because it chooses the highest channel value from both the base and the blend color to result in the color. Meaning, wherever red was a brighter value, it replaced it with solid red. Wherever green was a brighter value, it replaced it with solid green. And wherever blue was a brighter value, it's replacing it with blue. Overlay multiplies or screens the colors depending on the base color. Patterns or colors overlay the existing pixels while preserving the highlights and shadows of the base color. The base color is not replaced but mixed with the blend color to reflect the lightness or darkness of the original color. So how overlay is working, we will notice in 50% gray, there is no effect in overlay if you have 50% gray. However, if you have white, it is brightening and increasing the contrast. and if you have something on top that is darker, it is increasing the contrast and making it darker. Soft light darkens or lightens the colors depending on the blend color. The effect is similar to shining a diffuse spotlight on the image. If the blend color light source is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened as if it were dodged. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, the image is darkened as if it were burned in. Painting with a pure black or white. Once again, we can see in these blending modes that 50% gray has no effect on the image. If you have white, it is blending those colors and brightening that area, and anything darker than 50% gray is darkening that image. Hard light multiplies or screens the colors depending on the blend color. The effect is similar to shining a harsh spotlight on the image. If the blend color light source is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened as if it were screened. This is useful in adding highlights to an image. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, the image is darkened as if it were multiplied. This is useful in adding shadows to an image. Painting with pure black and pure white results in pure black and pure white. So what's hard light doing? So we can see here we have pure white. If you have pure white, it's keeping the original image. There's no blending, and there's no blending in black. There's also a pure transparency, meaning that you're seeing right through 50% gray. Now I'm going to create a new layer here. So when you paint with white, it's lightening the area. So you can, what it's saying is you can lighten shadows, and if you take dark, we don't want black because black makes pure black. So if we take darker than 50% gray, it's going to darken that area. So you're going to use hard light when you're basically using a brush or something and you want to paint in or darken an area. But you can't use black because black will make it totally black. And you're going to use a white lower than 50% gray to lighten an area. So hopefully that makes sense. Vivid light burns or dodges the colors by increasing or decreasing the contrast depending on the blend color. If the blend color, aka light source, is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened by decreasing the contrast. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, the image is darkened by increasing the contrast. So let's turn this off. Go back here, and we're going to go to vivid light. So once again, in vivid light, nothing is being affected if it's black or white, and 50% gray, you're seeing straight through. In this case, if you paint a white but not pure white and lower than 50% gray, it's increasing the brightness by increasing the contrast. Not the lightness, by the contrast, and same thing with darken. If you take a gray that is not black or higher than 50% gray, it's going to darken the area by increasing the contrast. Linear light burns or dodges colors by increasing the brightness depending on the blend color. If the blend color, aka the light source, is lighter than 50% gray, the image is lightened by increasing the brightness. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray, the image is darkened by decreasing the brightness. This is just like the opposite of vivid light. So in vivid light, it was increasing the brightness or darkening the image by contrast. Linear light's going to do the same thing, except for it's going to increase the values by brightness, not contrast. And if you have something that is not black but gray and darker than 50% gray, it's going to darken it by darkening the brightness values, not the contrast. You'll see that a lot of this stuff is very similar as it runs through. Pin light replaces the colors depending on the blend color. If the blend color, aka the light source, is lighter than 50% gray, pixels darker than the blend color are replaced, and pixels lighter than the blend color do not change. If the blend color is darker than 50% gray pixels, a lighter color than the blend color are replaced. The pixels darker than the blend color do not change. This is useful in adding special effects to images. So you can see this is something that is not going to be popular. So what does this mean here? If you have same thing, total black, it's going to keep the top. Total white, it's going to keep the top. 50% gray, you're just seeing through. It's going to come into effect, this pin light here. We will move it to when you have sort of a brighter or darker color, and it's giving you this different sort of pin light effect by using the either values that are lighter or darker below. Not something that you will use very much. Okay, this is hard mix, and this is sort of a complicated one. Adds the red, green, and blue channel values to the blend color of the RGB values of the base color. If the resulting sum for the channel is 255 or greater, it receives a value of 255, which is white. If less than 255, a value of 0, which is black. Therefore, all blended pixels have red, green, and blue channel values of either 0 or 255. This changes the pixels to primary additive colors: red, green, blue, black, or white. So basically it's adding up the values of the top layer and the bottom layer. Wherever it's going above 255, the values are above, it's just turning it totally white. If it is 0, it's making it totally black. And the additive primary colors, in the red circle is red, the green is green, and then there's blue is a blue overlay. Difference. Looks at the color information in each channel and subtracts either the blend color from the base color or the base color from the blend color, depending on which has the greater brightness value. Blending with white inverts the base color values, and blending with black produces no change. Difference. So this is how it works. Anything that's black is not getting touched. Anything that is white in the image is getting inverted. And then in the middle is what it's doing is it's looking at the values of the two images. Whichever it's brighter, it's changing and it's inverting that. Exclusion creates a similar effect but lower in contrast than the difference mode. Blending with white inverts the base color values, and blending with black produces no change. So we'll notice here in exclusion, black, there's no change. White, it's inverting it and lowering the contrast. And 50% gray, it's keeping the gray value and not doing anything to the bottom image as far as blending. Subtract looks at the color information in each channel and subtracts the blend color from the base color. In 8 and 16-bit images, any resulting negative values are clipped to 0. Subtract. Anything that is black, it is not going to affect your image below. It's just going to be the same way it was. White, it's going to invert anything in your image to black, and it's going to be black. And then in gray, what it's looking for is lighter values. Any value that's lighter, it's going to be darkened by the image above and come out with darker values. Divide. Looks at the color information in each channel and divides the blend color from the base color. So divide, if you have the color white, it's not affecting your image. Here, you just assume this is the easiest way to explain this. It's kind of dividing the calculation or image numbers, and it's brightening it by 50%. And here, it's almost doing it by 100%. So that's why we're getting total white. And in the black, we're getting some part of an image, but it's dividing it so there's a little values left. Something that you're hardly ever going to ever use. Hue creates a result color with the luminance and saturation of the base color and the hue of the blend color. So what does that mean? It's turning the bottom to black and white, but keeping those brightness values. But then it's taking the blend mode, which is the top, and using that color information to blend the image. Now it's going to look a little bit different if you had a color image on top, but what it's doing is it's making the bottom image black and white, but keeping that kind of that grayscale or those values, and then overlaying just the color information from the top image. Saturation creates a result color with the luminance and hue of the base color and the saturation of the blend color. So what is this doing here? Wherever there's a white, gray, and black, it's turning that area to a just black and white type of an image. However, if there is color, it is keeping or retaining the color information below, but changing the saturation depending on the red, green, or blue's saturation of that image. Color creates a result color with the luminance of the base color and the hue and saturation of the blend color. This preserves the gray levels in an image and is useful in coloring monochromatic images for tinting color images. So once again, anything where there's gray on the top layer, it's just making that gray. And wherever there's a color in the top image, it's just making that monochromatic. So if it's just red, instead of blending, it's making it just a monochromatic green, and monochromatic blue. Luminosity creates a result color with the hue and saturation of the base color and the luminance of the blend color. This mode creates the inverse effect of the color mode. Let me show you this because I think this is where this is going to be the most helpful. I'm going to come in here and look for my adjustments, and I'm going to make a curves adjustments layer, and I'm going to brighten this image. If I come up here to this curve adjustment and I change this to luminosity, what it's going to do is it's going to brighten the image, but it's not going to brighten the colors. Normally, if you just did a normal mode, when you brighten something, it's also going to brighten the color information as well. But when you change to luminosity, it's just affecting the light and dark values, but it's not affecting the color. One thing that happens, like if you have a person's skin tone in their face and you lighten them or darken them a lot, you'll notice that their skin will become more saturated or more vibrant. So what you can do is drop down to luminosity, and it will keep those original color values. It won't make it more saturated and brighter in the image. Well, that's blending modes. Hopefully that was helpful. Don't expect to remember everything that was going on. Just get some images, stack one image on top of each other, and toggle through the different options, and hopefully you'll eventually learn what they do and how to use them. So if you have any comments or questions, you can leave those below, and don't forget to subscribe.